Let's talk about Dharma. Dharma is a force of evolution. Think of like the wind guiding a kite in a certain direction, or the current of a river. Dharma wants to keep moving. The world wants to keep moving. Everything we know at some fundamental level wants to keep moving. But moving where, might you ask? Forward. The only direction is forward. Woo! Forward meaning evolutionary, forever expanding while simultaneously synthesizing into unity. Here's a concept. This is barely visible. One moment. Okay. All right. Here's a concept. This is a obviously perfect circle. And now we'll call this circle the circle of comfort. It's only fitting that I'm using a chalkboard because I write like a third grader. Sorry about that. Now within this circle are things that your rational mind or intellect already understands, experiences it's already undergone. The circle is really a gradient or a spectrum, with the outside being the least comfortable and the inside being the most comfortable. So like we can say this bullseye here in the middle are things like addictions and comfort foods and that kind of stuff. You see, Dharma wants us to expand, but ultimately Dharma wants to unify. But the process is twofold. One is the inner journey to find that place within you that is already unified. The other is the outward expansion, or the desire for greater experiences. Experiences that increase the scope of the intellect, and thus outwardly bring you closer to the unity with the all. You know, when we talk about growth, we talk about doing uncomfortable stuff, like going outside of your comfort zone. This is what I would call the analytic journey of Dharma. For example, when I was living within my addiction to drugs and alcohol, I was living right here, right in the middle. And anyone who's been in that situation can tell you that the force of Dharma is surely pushing against you. The longer you try to stay in the middle of the circle, the stronger the suffering gets. This is because you're opposing the force of Dharma. It's like swimming against the current. Many, unfortunately, don't make it out of this point. The force of Dharma always wins. I guess that's why I do stuff like this, like standing in front of my HD camera. I feel really exposed, as exposed as I could be with my clothes still on, I suppose. I'm just staring at myself in this camera lens and focusing on all my insecurities. It's great, really, expanding. But that's not the point. The point is, by doing something even a little bit uncomfortable for me, I'm expanding the scope of that comfort circle that I so beautifully illustrated earlier. Believe me, I'd much rather be eating pizza and playing video games right now. I actually still might later on. The point is that this action is dharmic. Dharmic in that it fits within the flow of my own personal evolution. It helps me to expand and to bring my small self, my individual being, that much closer to the unity that I can feel within me. All right, hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Seek and Tell podcast. Yes, we have a name now. Things are growing. I'm growing. The podcast is growing. The podcast has a camera in a different area. It's here. I realized after episode 1, I don't really need to be looking in the camera the whole time, and it's just kind of distracting for me. So I'm going to see how this goes. Yeah, it's all a work in progress. I'm very new to this. I'm just trying to take it as it comes and sort of listen to my own feeling on things in terms of making changes that will hopefully improve the overall quality of the podcast. I realized also episode 1, I didn't even say my name. So Hi, my name is Dylan McDonald. I'm the host and creator of this podcast, which is, as of now, kind of just a school project, but would be nice at some point in the future to continue doing this with a larger scope. Not that I've limited myself now. I mean, I've limited myself to as much as I'm capable of. But anyway, if you're seeing this, you probably just watched the introduction on Dharma. Hopefully that ended okay. Um, like I said, I'm still learning all this, so shooting things with at some times subpar equipment and trying to make my vision come true isn't always the easiest. Um, and I can get in this mindset where I just want to get it done, and so I'm just like, all right, let's just do it and not listen to the moment and how the moment is calling for me to maybe make a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there. I'm doing my best, and that is for me sort of been my uh, what is it that you things you say to yourself in the mirror affirmation. That's sort of been my affirmation for the week is to proceed uh, into action while rested, meaning don't get so caught up here in the head and the intellect, and kind of let every now and then just let the energy just drop, and kind of listen to your heart. And that was all inspired by the interview I did on Sunday with Candace, which you guys will see right after this. But I'm doing it again. I'm not introducing myself. So I'm Dylan McDonald. I'm the host of the podcast. I am. Where do I start? From the beginning. Uh, yeah, this will be a little as quick of a possible story about myself. I was born in Arizona. At some point in my teenage years, I developed a crippling addiction to drugs and alcohol. I, in my 20s, attended a few rehabs. Ultimately, I went to Vancouver, British Columbia to attend a place called the John Volkin Academy, which is a 2-year therapeutic community. It was a interesting experience, to say the least. It was one of the most meaningful things. At that point in my life, it was the most meaningful thing I've ever done. It was the only thing I really had ever finished in my life. So I finished there, and I really had nowhere to go. It'd been 2 years living in a bubble. So I went to Australia, kind of started a new life. I lived in Australia for about 4 years. I met a beautiful woman who is now my wife. I learned Transcendental Meditation. I'd kind of always been, um, I can't say always. I think looking back in it, I had always been a seeker, but I would very much not identify as a seeker. In fact, through my teenage years, identified as a very strong atheist, but I was seeking through alternative means. So I wanted that expansion, but I just didn't really know where to find it. And that leads me to getting knee deep into spirituality at some point in Australia, and then that kind of leading me to learning transcendental meditation, which I learned. And I had been doing Headspace, the app, for about a year or two, very, very regularly as mindfulness stuff. And it was nice. And when I learned TM, it's pretty life changing. I remember after the first session being like, okay, this is it. This is the answer for me. And so I kind of just took that and ran with it. I just tried to do as much as they would offer me in terms of like advanced techniques and doing these TM retreats and stuff in Australia. And eventually I was offered a scholarship to attend a university in the middle of America, a place called Fairfield, Iowa. And the university is called Maharishi International University. It was founded by Maharishi, who is the guy who founded the Transcendental Meditation movement. So obviously named after him. And it's a university where we all learn TM and meditate together, and it goes on the block system. It calls itself consciousness based education, and it has some really good ideas, I think, in terms of how education should be delivered. So I moved from Australia to Fairfield at age 29 to attend college for the first time. Something that I had not expected that I was ever going to do in my life, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and that's I've been in this place now where it feels like every big decision I make in life is such the right decision. That's a great place to be, and I think that leads nicely into the theme of today's episode, which is Dharma. As I talked about up top, it's kind of like the force of evolution, but it's also oftentimes like referred to as like one's path. So it's very much one and the same. I think the path part is part and parcel of the larger definition of what Dharma is as a concept and as a force. I originally wanted to include the interview with is the right word, with Craig Pearson this week, but I felt like this one with Candance Badgett was much more fitting to this week's theme. She talks about, well, I ask her about Dharma. She talks a lot about just kind of being given all of these things to do, and like this unfoldment of her dharma is like more responsibility after another. And she said something really profound in that responsibility is, she says, it's another technique for her, meaning like another yoga, another meditation, another form of expanding consciousness. And I mentioned the quote to her that God only gives you what you can handle. And so it's sort of like, I know I can be at some points in my life resentful when I have so much going on, especially when this has happened to me in workplaces before where I get asked to do so much more than the next person. And I'm like, I'm okay with it until I burn myself out. And then a switch flips and I become resentful at everybody, and it's no good. Um, but I have come now to view that as grace, to view that as I'm being given all of these things because that's sort of my test. And it's not a pass or fail test. It's just a test that decides what the next thing is. I say a litmus test in the interview. And I have been taking that to heart since yesterday when the interview happened, and just kind of trying to embrace everything that I have going on in my life right now, including this podcast and the thing I just filmed. So, yeah, I think that's probably long enough of an intro. I'm gonna try to get out of my own way. I do want to say, not to qualify the interview too much, but uh, I wasn't very content with the way I handled the interview. I think getting out of my own way is another affirmation that I've been having since I did the interview, and I think I didn't do a very good job of getting out of my own way in the interview. I think I went into it with too much of an agenda and tried to push things along too much. You might not notice it, but it's just something I noticed, and so I want to bring up here, not to qualify it and be like, it's if it's bad, I told you it was going to be bad. But just because I think it's kind of therapeutic to say that I could have done better and I will do better next time. So this is just me learning in real time, and you get to witness it. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the interview with Candance Badgett, and I'll see you after the interview, I guess. Bye. Okay, we're live. Hello and welcome to another one of hopefully many interviews with a very special guest that I will introduce. She is one of the hardest working people in the TM movement, as I have found trying to schedule this interview. She watched the movie Field of Dreams and heard the quote, "If you build it, they will come." She took that quote and ran with it and went ahead and built the world-renowned Ayurvedic Clinic, The Raj, right in Southeast Iowa, of all places. She is the chairman, the Global Mother Divine Organization, president of the Global Health Foundation for Women, and as I said, leader of the world-renowned Raj, one of the hardest people I know. Please welcome Candance Badgett. Candance.
You, Dylan, thank you very much. And I have to add, it was certainly in conjunction with my husband that the Raj manifested, and we fulfilled that vision that Marishi shared with us. It was a beautiful vision. So, and it was a great gift to ourselves to create that facility. It's been a very fulfilling work, very fulfilling focus.
Well, that's great. That's a great place to start because I am curious how that whole idea manifested from infinite potentialities to this beautiful facility in the middle of the cornfields of Southeast Iowa.
Well, it's interesting because um, certainly we had no specific qualifications to take this on. And it was a very beautiful vision that Maharishi brought forth back in the early 80s, 1980s, um, to revive that whole system of medicine, Ayurveda, within the Vedic literature, a tradition that, due to foreign influence, dominating India for many years from different directions, um, especially with the British rule of India. During that time, Western medicine or allopathic medicine was brought in, and really Ayurveda sort of became, a whole generation grew up thinking that this was folk medicine, and that was just something their grandparents, great grandparents did. And now they had, modern medicine. And so much was getting lost. A lot of the Ayurvedic colleges were being closed. And I think Maharishi realized that in bringing out transcendental meditation, the correct way to meditate, that had also been lost, it became evident that, of course, due to this intimate mind-body coordination component, that also addressing the physiology and the imbalances in the physiology were very important to support the growth of consciousness, the expansion of consciousness, and the gaining of higher states of consciousness. And so he began to revive. So this had been happening for a while, and then Maharishi really wanted, again, to employ these group dynamics of consciousness by having a very large group of meditators and siddhas doing program together in Fairfield. And he wanted a group of 7,000 at that time, which meant we needed 5,000 more people. So he came up with this glorious vision of creating like a Mayo Clinic of preventive health using Ayurveda that he had been focused on with a number of prominent Vaidya's, Ayurvedic doctors in India, reviving that whole system of medicine. And he asked for volunteers who would be willing to take on this project. He said 10 people should take it on, create 500 rooms each. That would be 5,000, and we would have not only housing, but we would have jobs available. And he wanted an Ayurvedic clinic built in each of those developments. So my husband stood up and offered to do it. We were thinking we would do this on property we own near the campus. Maharishi, however, had a different idea of, as said, this Mayo Clinic of preventive health that would be kind of its own, ultimately its own city, which is now Maharishi Vedic City. So we were the first, and it was a pretty exciting adventure, since we had no idea what we were getting into. And it was really like learning how to swim by being thrown into the lake. But we oversaw the construction, and we then hired, I don't know, close to 50 employees, and ran a restaurant, a clinic, a hotel, all of which we'd never even had employees before. So it was really quite the learning experience. And we were very fortunate. There was some inheritance that came in at that time, and we just were very bold about it. We always say that our ship came sailing in the front door, sailed right through the living room, and right out the back door. And in the end, we just feel that it is without a doubt the best investment we ever made, absolutely in terms of the growth ability, the growth opportunity that was there for my husband, Rogers, and myself. And the incredible fulfillment of watching the transformation of people every single week for the past 31 years. It's an incredibly fulfilling life that we live, and it was a gift to us in the end.
it's a great mindset to have, and I'm sure it's a reality for you. So it probably doesn't take a lot of convincing yourself that it's paying dividends. I'm curious, how long did it take for you to get those fulfillment dividends back from it? Were there lots of challenges at first before you were like, ah, yes, this is it. This is what we intended to do.
A zillion challenges, but dividend paybacks the minute we raised our hand and said yes.
Hmm.
And that came in the ability to have that direct relationship with Maharishi, to work directly for Maharishi. And he was eager to hear the progress, and um, the guidance that came was invaluable. And what was happening was a process by which we little by little dissolved our um, unconscious sense of limitations. In other
Hmm.
words, who we were, what we could do, what we were capable of doing. I don't think we often realize the extent to which, for one reason or another, we impose those kinds of limitations on ourselves. And the thing that was Marshy's great skill as a teacher was that he broke those boundaries. He
Hmm.
created one, and if you could stay on the train, it wasn't an easy ride, because it's hard to let go. You
Hmm.
get afraid. Can I really do that? Will I be successful? Maybe we'll fail. All those kinds of doubts. But if you can just stay on the train, as we always would say, Marsha would give us the opportunity to demonstrate to ourselves
Hmm.
what we were capable of doing and what we were capable of accomplishing and who we were capable of being. And so the dividend was literally simply just stepping in to who we are step by step over time through one challenge after another. I know one other person who was involved with this big vision. They also had a development. And at one point they said to Marishi, I'm not sure if this project is a blessing or a curse. Marshy laughed and he said, the curse is the blessing.
Hmm.
In other words, what you perceive as too much, more than you could handle, more than you're capable of, if you work through that, that is the
Hmm.
blessing. That is the blessing.
Hmm.
So fascinating
It,
time.
Yeah, it's an amazing point, because we talk about going outside of our comfort zone and challenging ourselves, and how that's how we grow. But if you zoom out, and the perspective that Maharishi had is we speak about this unified field that connects everything, and this is a field of infinite potentialities through which existence manifests. And so if we have this field of infinite potentialities within us, then theoretically we have the potential to do anything within the scope of the level that we're doing it at, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And what this comes back to, it's not a matter of I need to develop certain qualities, or I'm too shy, or to be successful, you have to be a different kind of person. It's all
Hmm.
about activating the thinking process in a way that you can fulfill desires. It's not about your personality being perfect or exemplary. That comes by way of connecting to that field of
Hmm.
pure intelligence and pure creativity, but it's simply activating that potential to align yourself with the laws of nature and let the laws of nature do the work. I remember one time Maharishi said another fantastic principle. He said very specifically to me, he said, let nature organize by remaining rested, because there was so much to accomplish. It was so easy to think, but I have to do this and I have to do that. And
Hmm.
it's don't compromise the ability to activate the intelligence of nature to support your desire. And especially when your desire is aligned with, with all that is good and noble.
Mm.
And nature's so eager to support, but we have to cultivate our ability to open our own awareness to that field. So, uh, it just comes back to these very simple principles that are all laid out in this incredible Vedic science that Maharishi
Yeah,
has written.
we don't realize how much we get in our own ways with the accomplishment of things sometimes. I think it's a lot of it has to do with our intellect and trying to understand how the pathway to how everything will work out. It's like our intellect wants to understand, it wants to know every step of the way towards the success that what we perceive as success for whatever it is we're trying to do. But it's impossible to understand every step of the way, and so you really just have to at a certain point let go and go into the void of the unknown and allow something to be created. And it sounds like that's
Absolutely.
exactly what you did.
It's a beautiful principle. And, in that process of working directly for Maharishi, it became very clear that the strategy is you take time to create your vision. So you take time, you think about the logistics, you see where you want to go, you figure out what is the best way to go. You lay out your action steps. Absolutely, there is time invested in the beginning to think through what you're doing and what is the best way to get to your goal. But once you've done that, you don't look to the ultimate goal. Now you put your full attention on the first step. And it's like, putting a ladder against a tall building, and you want to get to the top, you want to get up to the roof, enjoy the view from there. Okay, once you realize this is my goal, then you just keep your attention on each rung that you now step
Mm,
on as a way to get to your goal. And because you have to be fully alert to, oh, what was the feedback from that first step? Oh, I'm
mm,
going to have to adjust a little bit how I get to the second step now. And now I'm going to have to readjust. So you're exactly right. There's a lot of readjustment that happens along the way, but it happens most effectively by having your full attention on the step you're on and making
mm.
sure that you're making the progress that you expected from that first step.
I love that analogy. There's it reminds me of the quote in the various Christian faiths. I don't know exactly the source of it, but that God helps those who help themselves. And that's
Right.
sort of like you take the steps, you open yourself up, but you take the step, and then from there is an organizing power that is giving you direct feedback almost on what to do next. It's always there. We just have to
Yeah.
look for it. Um, so I'd
Really.
like to just rewind a little bit and ask you about your journey up until learning transcendental meditation, your journey as a seeker. What led you to that? Were you always curious into these various spiritual traditions, or did you just happen upon it, or how did that work?
I think, a lot of it was just the time, my generation being the baby boomers, and um, you know, you could say, those who were seeking alternative
Mm,
approaches to living a fulfilling life. So it was a time in the late 60s, where life was very comfortable in the US. Material comfort was quite the norm for the majority of people. And then there was a sense that there was still some lack of fulfillment. Generally speaking, as a person growing up, you could see it in the families around you and people you were growing up with. And so I think there was a whole generation that began to seek for alternative ways of finding fulfillment in life, really.
mm,
That's what it
mm,
was about, because there was enough affluence that people weren't just focused on, well, how am I going to make a living and how am I going to, feed myself? How am I going to feed my family? A whole society had moved beyond that to the point where now you can think about quality of life. You can think about what's significant in life. And so, yeah, it was really a hallmark of the time, I would say.
Mm.
And that is, of course, when so many people stepped into the TM movement at that time. It was just an enormous influx because Maharishi offered something so practical and something that it wasn't you were depending on someone else. We had all looked into so many different spiritual traditions, and it was clear we wanted to be self-sufficient. And that's
Mm.
the practicality that Maharishi offered. Everything you need is within yourself. You just need to have some guidance in unfolding that. And then you can do this on your own. I mean, of
Mm.
course, the fascination with Maharishi is that his advanced knowledge into these principles of life and how the self-referral consciousness functions at the source of everything, all of it was so fascinating and so compelling. And the experience right off the bat when I learned TM was so profound that then
Mm.
it's like, okay, you want more and you want to be more involved. And one thing just led to another. I ended up at MIU as a student in the first year that MIU had moved to Fairfield. And, the rest is history. Unfolded,
It,
unfolded from there. Very fulfilling. I was very concerned um, that education wasn't personally relevant. And that's what MIU provides, because
mm.
everything is a reflection of your own consciousnesses. Everything ends up being about opening up that extraordinary potential within us. Then we can all do anything. We can accomplish anything we want to accomplish. So yeah, I I found the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I really I found what I was looking for, and
Mm.
so that was it. Just went with it all the way.
Mm. And it seems to me that there is it found you and you found it. There was a mutual agreement that this is where you need to be, because you have since developed into quite the leader within the TM movement. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious, when did that begin? Because I guess maybe I didn't introduce all your credentials, but I did introduce some of them, which are already quite impressive. But you're also what we call the Raj Rajeshri. Is that it? Rajeshri. I always have trouble pronouncing that.
It's an impossible
Of
thing to pronounce.
yeah, of Australia and the United States and
Canada.
other in
Canada.
Canada, right? So could you explain first of all how all of that unfolded and what that entails?
Well, first and foremost, I think it all unfolded simply on the ground of a resolution, a commitment. In other words, I found it, this is it. No doubts, no looking around. And therefore, that gives you the opportunity to just um, move into this whole field of life with full commitment and full focus and full appreciation of the ultimate goal, which
Mm.
is to unfold higher states of consciousness. And that just gives you the basis to keep going for more and more. Opportunities open up, you step into them. Another opportunity opens up, you step into it. And um, so I think it just was a very natural
Mm.
unfolding of a commitment. And I'm very fortunate to have a husband who, was also absolutely committed and
Mm.
knowing what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. So those kinds of things allow life to move forward quickly.
And that's what we would call Dharma, more
Yeah,
or
that's
less.
what we call Dharma, where you're doing what you love. And And I'll get to the women's organization and that whole chapter, but just to say that it's incredible to have a life where your family life, your social life, your work life, your spiritual aspirations, they're all fulfilled in one
Mm-hmm.
activity.
Hmm.
It's really remarkable. My sister is also a Rajajeshi. My sister was also involved in you know, the starting our activities with the Raj and the
Hmm.
beginning days. And so it's just been, and then we meet amazing people who come through the Raj every week, and very intelligent, creative, interesting people, and then so fulfilling to just see what they gain. And so many
Hmm.
people can so profoundly helped in regard to their health issues. So all of these things together, um, it really paid off to, we always say we jumped off of a cliff and we willingly are living life in a free fall. You know, when we built the Raj in the middle of a cornfield, offering Ayurveda at that time, 31 years ago, when no one could say the word, spell the word, they had no idea what it was. So it was, you know, the marketing challenge of all times, but it just was the best thing we ever could have done.
Hmm.
Now, once, as I was saying, you know, once you're working directly full-time for Maharishi, his goal is to keep removing those senses of limitation. So what comes is another request, another challenge. Now you could take on this, and now you could take on this, and oh, you've done so well with that. And how about this? And so what we learned right away is no matter how intimidating it may appear to be, that we would just say yes. Once again, there's the commitment. And that's everything. That resolve and that commitment is what ultimately opens every door.
Hmm.
So then, you know, then we would accomplish this and then something else. And then, especially because we had been so involved with promoting Ayurveda all these years, then when Maharishi was really looking to bring together those who could take administrative responsibilities to continue the movement after he left, you know, he called many people who could come and be on what was called the Raja training course. And so my husband, Rogers now, uh, he was on that first course, and I was able to join him about midway through that course. And then the following year, he created an administrator training course for women. And so it's, again, kind of long roundabout story, because it was really, it was for single women. But Rona Abramson and myself, Marishi, invited us to come on that course with many of the women who had been founders of the Mother Divine program, and other
Hmm.
women. I think 18 of us or so on that first course. And we didn't really know what it was about, but it was extraordinary. We were there for over a year, really involved with the whole process for almost 2 years, where it was just knowledge based. I mean, we just did very long programs and uh, really cultivated that that value of pure consciousness within ourselves. And Maharishi just went into incredible insights into all of Vedic knowledge. And it was just an extraordinary opportunity and very experience oriented. So we would share our experiences, and Maharishi would go into the knowledge on that basis. And then at the end, he said, now I'd like you to create the women's wing of the TM organization. He named it Global Mother Divine Organization, and it was distinct from the Mother Divine program in that it would include all programs for women. He wanted women's peace palaces or women's TM centers. He wanted women's clinics and colleges and universities and schools, and it was quite a big scope of goals and activities to be accomplished over the years. And really, he vested a lot of authority in our position in relationship to the women's wing of the TM organization and the activities under that umbrella. So it was probably at that point, it was a very big boundary breaker. It was a very
Mm.
big removing of any sense of limitations. It was just the degree to which what he said to us and empowered us in regard to our responsibilities was awe-inspiring, we could say. And so then I had to start thinking in very different terms. And okay, it's not something I had focused on. Okay, what are women's issues in the world? My focus was on higher states of consciousness for everyone. And so then really taking that into consideration and why, coming to terms with why it seemed to be very important to Maharishi and the future of his movement, that there were opportunities for women to come together in their own company. So, that's been an amazing process. And I would say that I have grown more in the past 15 years in structuring the women's wing of the movement and all the challenges that have come along with that than in my entire history in the TM organization prior to that. And there was a lot that was accomplished in terms of building the Raj, running the Raj, and rising to that occasion. But this was an extraordinary
Mm.
opportunity. So I'm just so grateful for every opportunity, every responsibility that I've been given. And I've come to realize that responsibility is an advanced technique for gaining higher
Mm.
states of consciousness. It's
Mm.
something that I think all of us, myself included, there's a tendency to avoid, how much more responsibility does anybody really want to have? It's, you think, well, I'd just like to have some time to enjoy. But the reality is the most enjoyable thing is the sense of making progress, that
Mm.
sense of growth. That's where fulfillment lies. So whatever it is that allows that to happen, that is what you want. That's what you
Mm.
want. So I came to understand that responsibility is a gift.
I love that point so much because when we talk about Dharma or the force of evolution, always almost challenging us to move forward, always pushing us forward in some way, we see that there's a quote actually to drop my second God quote of the interview. I've heard in 12 step meetings, something along the lines of God never gives you more than you can handle. And I think that speaks to your responsibility being like an advanced technique. And I've noticed from my perspective that it's always those that are the most capable that get tested the most. It's like the teacher who sees the kid that they believe has the potential, and that's the kid that they're really
We're going to push
hard
the
on.
hardest.
They yeah. And that person, you could become resentful. I've been in that situation before where I'm like, why me? I look at all the stuff I have to do, and I look at the guy next to me. I'm like, why am I doing so much more? But exactly, I've really learned to see that as grace, as almost a litmus test for me moving, increasing in my scope of consciousness. It's like
Absolutely right.
this is there for me to get through it and to grow, and therefore grow my consciousness and expand. And that's beautiful. And it seems like you've done very well in your litmus tests because there just keeps being more and more dropped on your lap.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, you have to realize, this could start infringing on my ability to do my full program. And
Right.
that's where all the support of nature is coming. So,
Mm.
and then my focus has to come back to protecting that. But
Mm.
other than that, you hold on to that and the sky's the limit. You can do anything. I see it. I see that it's possible.
Mm. Well, so that how do you keep that balance then? I mean, I guess you kind of mentioned it of having that non-negotiable time of like this is when I do my meditation. So what would you recommend for people to keep their balance in these really trying times where it feels like everything is on their plate?
Yeah, you know, it really is reminding yourself all the time. Um, the fact that, as Marisha said to me, let nature organize. You
Mm,
have to trust and you have to realize it's never going to all happen simply based on your efforts. You have to have that support. And the only way you can get it is by opening your awareness to that field for considerable periods of time. So it is a reciprocal relationship. You give your attention, you get the support. You give your attention to that field, you get the support of that field, of your own unbounded self, happens to be. But everything in the world is telling us the opposite. Every
mm,
message coming in is you're obligated. No, you're obligated to do that. You're obligated to this. You're obligated. People are counting on you. Um, no pain, no gain. The harder you try, the better you do. All these messages that are coming into us. And you just have to remember where you owe your attention first and foremost is to your own unbounded self. And that's where you owe it to yourself to align with the will of God, and you have the support of the divine. And nothing can transform your life like that. Nothing can bring you success, which is true success. That's the other thing. You have to start defining what is success. Okay, you have a
mm,
lot of money and you're exhausted, you have health problems, you have relationship problems. So those are all those things that money can't help you with. So
mm,
you have to be very careful when you choose what are you committing to and what is your goal. And it's important that you define it very well early on, or you end up with regrets later on when
mm,
finally it dawns on you, oh, my priorities weren't the best. So
mm,
you just have to remind yourself, and it's not something that I mean, I think for many people, and especially since I do feel an obligation to give back to Maharishi in terms of maintaining his vision and progress towards the fulfillment of that vision, because Maharishi's given me everything. And so even that sense of obligation, I have to remind myself, Maharishi would never want me to put that first and compromise my own ability to step in fully to who I am and to master the art of living, which is do less and accomplish more. Do not strain, do less through powerful thinking, through powerful insights, which come from the growth of consciousness.
mm. I think that's a pretty beautiful cherry on top of this interview Sunday, wish to end it. So thank you very much. I'm so glad we could make this happen,
I,
Candace.
me too.
I'm happy to see you again. It's been some time. So pleasure as always. I can see in your eyes that you have no regrets about it and you have so much insight to offer. So it's great talking to someone like you, and I could just see it within you that you're doing exactly what you are meant to be doing. And that's just a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Thank you,
Mm.
Dylan. And I enjoyed reconnecting, and let's get together again, lunch sometime.
Absolutely. I'll hold you to it. I'll be the one to reach out because I know you're way too busy to think about me, but I have plenty of time to think about having lunch at the Raj with you. So I'll make it
Wonderful.
happen.
Keep reminding
All
me.
right. Well,
Thanks
thank you
again.
very much. Enjoy your Sunday and take
You too.
care.
Thanks, Dylan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. That was interview with Candace Badgett. I hope you enjoyed if you listened all the way through. If you did, you're a true fan and you're really sticking it out, and I appreciate that. Whether you are doing it because you know me and love me, or because you're just doing it because you're interested, either way, shout out to you. I hope you enjoyed that. Not much to say for this outro here, other than thanks for listening all the way to the end or skipping all the way to the end. I look forward to doing this again, bigger and better next episode. So once again, I've been Dylan McDonald. This has been the Seek and Tell podcast. Thank you very much. Bye bye.